Bombay. And even your deputy director happens to be our director at the moment, Karnikar, I think, if I get the name correct. And
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, sir, for
and
sharing your experience with us. And we are really glad to have you with us
it's
for
always a
core
pleasure. I
engineering
keep on
session.
attending. I have crossed 86 now, and it's my pleasure to attend most of the webinars from IASC, Bombay, and various ICERs from various places, various universities. It has been my pleasure to attend most of the webinars. That is my only, I would say, passion these days. So thanks a lot for inviting me to attend your webinar. Thank you, my dear friends.
Thank you, sir. And looking forward to hear more from you, maybe in one of the upcoming sessions. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, sir. Anyone else who would like to share their experience, or maybe you can introduce yourselves also with all of us, which might be a batch you belong to, or what inspired you to join the session today, whether aerospace engineering is one of your areas of interest. So feel free to unmute yourself and share your experience, and we'll start in a couple of minutes.
Hey, hi everyone. This is Utsav. So I am from Bangalore chapter and I am a chemical engineer, pass out of 2014 batch from IIT Bombay, working in SAPIC right now. And I attended all the sessions before this. The point which brings me here is that see, ISRO I am very passionate about and wanted to know how things going to go on in the future, and how if is there anything chemical engineer can contribute if it is possible. Anything would like to know that. And yeah, the past experience has been very good. I attended the session, which is very good knowledge sharing sessions, I would say. So all the best, team.
Thank you so much, Utsav, for introducing yourselves to all of us. Anyone else who would like to share their experience with us or just introduce yourself to all of us?
Hi guys,
And
this,
yeah, hi. Yes,
go
sir.
ahead with it. Now this is 126 Ali Asgar. I'm part of this core engineering track. I'm passed out from 2005 class, civil engineer, and really glad to have Scan sir on the call. I mean, you are one of the senior most person we have, and it feels really good to see how big the IITB fraternity is. So I think we have got someone here who is with you junior, so must be in the past 3-4 years, and then you are from I think 60s or seven. I don't know when you passed, when you finished the college, sir. Which year was that?
Well, I have been a faculty member at IIT Kanpur from 1960 to 95, from the
Okay,
very
faculty in
inception of
60.
from the
Okay, so
very
you're faculty.
inception from the
Okay,
very
sir.
inception of the institute. And that's why I mentioned your Ashok Gupta happened to be in the third batch, if I get it right. That was
Okay.
my student, I would say. It has been a pleasure. As I told you, we have very close relationship with especially IIT Bombay.
Okay. Okay. No, good to have you here. We'll definitely reach out to you for some more ideas, and maybe you, as you said, you can also give us some your words of wisdom at some point of time, and also today, of course. So yeah, good to have you all on this call, and maybe with this we are at the dot time. So if you want, we can start the call now.
Yes, definitely. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. A very good evening and a warm welcome to the fourth in the series of core engineering talks, a series which we have initiated focusing on one of our track pillars, which is knowledge sharing and mutual collaboration amongst alumni of IIT Bombay Alumni Association. To start with today's session, let me welcome a very special guest, and it's our pleasure to have him with us, Mr. Devesh Khatu, who is the CEO of the Alumni Association. And I would like to invite Devesh to share a few words and the welcome address for today's session. Over to you, Devesh.
Thank you, Vidyut, and thank you for having me over. For those who don't know me, I'm also an alumnus of IIT Bombay. I graduated in 1990, BTech Computer Science, Hostel 9. I've been the CEO of the Alumni Association for the last 2 years now. A little bit about the Alumni Association. So we've been around now for 20 years. In fact, we just completed 20 years last month. And we'll be actually having an event in October to commemorate that. So October 10th, mark your calendars. So what the Alumni Association does is basically it just connects alumni to each other and back to the institute. And we do this through a bunch of different ways. And one of the key pillars of our outreach is essentially our chapters. And so Bangalore chapter, we are fortunate to have several great leaders in the chapter who have been actively organizing events over the past year and connecting alumni there in spite of the pandemic. And so I would actually like to thank all the EC members, including chapter president Vidyut, Abhishek, Ali, Divyam, Khushbu, Richa, Rijas, Smita, Saurav, and Utsam. It's great that Bangalore chapter has several different tracks based on people's interests. And I've also attended a couple of events in the core engineering track. And although myself, I'm not in my field anymore, but there are several people who are. And I think it's great that we're having some events that focus on this sector. And of course, space being a very topical topic right now with two famous people going into space in the last month itself has sort of piqued a lot of people's interest in the topic. But of course, besides the billionaires going to space, I think there's there's definitely more useful uses of space, including research and defense and meteorology, to name a few. And so hopefully we'll hear from our illustrious alumnus today, Sandeepan Das from ISRO. And so without further ado, I'm just going to hand it back over to Vidyut to continue on with the session.
Thank you so much, Devesh. And as you can see, I have changed my virtual background to the space environment already. So to start with, let me first introduce the moderator for today's session, which is Mr. Ali. Ali has been a very active volunteer for our chapter and one of the key persons behind initiating the core engineering talks. To give you some idea, for every track, we have track coordinators, the people who are the pillars behind organizing the events for each of those tracks. So we have Mr. Ali and Mr. Rijas, who are the track coordinators for the core engineering track. And during the event, I will also share a link to a form, Google form, where you can fill up if you are interested in becoming a part of the team of volunteers behind organizing all these activities. And if you have any other ideas which we can implement in this track, we are open to all such ideas. With that, let me hand over the stage to Ali, who is the track coordinator for the core engineering track, and professionally, he's working as a project manager for the Shell Technology Center in Bangalore. Over to you, Ali.
Thanks, Vidyut. Thanks, Devesh. So once again, warm welcome to everybody for our fourth talk on the core engineering. It's a great pleasure to invite today Mr. Sandeepan Das, who would be sharing with us. So something about Mr. Sandeepan. So he is a NIT and IIT Bombay alumnus. He's been gold medalist in NIT, if I recall correctly. So very talented, and he's been working with ISRO for some time now. He'll be sharing with us the topic that we have chosen today is about the history, challenges, and future of Indian space journey. And Mr. Sandeepan would be talking based on his experience and what he has gathered in his career so far. As Vidyut said, this is an ongoing track, so we will share the link with you. Please feel free to reach out to any of us for any ideas that you would want to see more of going forward. And the plan is that we'll do around 30 to 35 minutes where Mr. Sandeepan will share his experience with us. And post that, we'll have a Q&A session do feel free to put in the questions as we are going through the session. We do have some questions which has come as a part of initial form that was submitted. So we do have some questions from there, but it would be good if you put in the questions as we go through. And also we'll then invite you to also ask the question yourself towards the end of the session when Mr. Sandeepan has finished his talk. That's all for now. So handing over to Sandeepan. Are you going to share the screen or how?
Yeah, I'll be.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Sandeepan. It's yours now.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, we can see your screen, Sandeep.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, a very, very warm good evening to all, and a big thank you to the organizers, especially Bidyut, Devesh, Ali, for having me on board. It's a great pleasure to be a part of IIT Bombay Alumni Chapter Bangalore. Well, without wasting any more time, let's begin our journey today from the present. As Bidyut and Ali have rightly mentioned, that in the past 3 years, and I specialize, I'm working in ISRO. I specialize in material science and a bit of metallurgy too, but at heart, I'm a storyteller, to be frank. So working in this area of rocket science has never been a thought, forget about dream, because we never knew ISRO hires material science graduates. Anyway, it's a different story, how I ended up here. But let's start why I have chosen this picture in the slide. And what we are going to concentrate today is the topic is basically history, challenges, and the future of Indian space program. So I'll take you through this entire journey from 1950s when it was conceptualized to 2021 where it is right now and what it proposes to do in the near future. Bidyut, Devesh, Ali, is it okay? Shall I start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Just one thing for others in the call to know that we are recording this session. So you would have got a notification. We will be sharing this video afterwards. So hence for that purpose, we'll be recording.
Yeah.
Sandeepan, back to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so why I have actually, you might be all amazed at why I have chosen this picture. There is no rocket science here. It is a random picture of the assembly tower. You can see at the back before the PSLV C-43 launch, which is actually the 45th launch of this launch vehicle. Yeah, but what happens during this? This is a stage vehicle assembly, right? Built and all the stages are stacked. The stages shall be filled. That means the propellant shall be filled with, and the countdown to the launch shall automatically begin. Now, this is the picture, the first picture on the left corner. It's a picture of T-7 seconds. Next one is exactly when the ignition starts. That is T-0. Third one is the liftoff. The fourth one is that the satellite has been deployed or whatever the payload has been deployed in the orbit. Now, why? So actually, it is a successful vehicle launch and placing the payload in the orbit. This is what is mission accomplished. But one thing we must remember, how did ISRO accomplish this? I have just taken PSLV C-43. It's because I have been part of the ISRO and then this launch took place. So this was my first launch that I have witnessed. So how did we accomplish this? One point that I should mention here is, it's fine to celebrate the success, but it's more important to heed the lessons of the failure. What failure I'm going to talk about is in the upcoming slides. You see, if anyone just can tell, like, what are these failures? Anyone? Any idea?
Challenger.
Correct. Absolutely correct. The left one is the Challenger 1, and the right one is the Columbia disaster, the debris of the Columbia disaster. Failures of the space system are catastrophic. This is one thing we must keep into account, which can actually paralyze the confidence of an entire organization. Two visuals I will show next of ISRO, one the success, one the failure, and one the success. How the reactions, you can always understand what the person or the team goes through. Now see, this is a failure that occurred on 25th of December 2010, GSLV Mark II F6 mission. And this one is a successful launch of GSLV Mark III M1 mission in 2019, on 22nd of July 2019. Now you just see the reactions, how it was. This was the reaction after the F6 failure, and this was the reaction after the Mark III M1 success. Now, so I have divided my entire the presentations into four parts. The regimes is 1950 to 1960s, followed by 1970s to 80s, 1990 to 200 to 2010, and the current scenario. So let's start, and you just sit and enjoy the journey of the entire ISRO, how it was conceptualized and how it is going to lead, how it has been led, and how and what where it is standing right now. Okay, fine. The inception. I mean, this is not a movie, but actually it's the beginning of the Indian space program. That's just a picture that I've shared here. So beginning of the space age actually took in 1957. It was only 10 years of Indian independence that USA and USSR, who were in a different league altogether, had already established launch vehicles to take off, place man-made satellites into orbits. And the space age started in 1958. So this is Sputnik 1 versus the Explorer 1. And India was then way thinking that okay, our time will come, definitely, surely. Now, these two gentlemen in the picture have to be credited for what ISRO is today. One is Dr. Homi Bhabha on the left, and on the right is Dr. Sarabhai, who were instrumental in conceptualizing and convincing the government of India at that point of time for the need of a space program. They genuinely felt the importance of space program because of three important things. One is the metrology. Number two is the remote sensing. And number three is the telecommunication. Each of the three things I'll be addressing in subsequent slides, how with each development of a launch vehicle, each of the three were taken into care. So this is the picture that led to the formation of INCOSPAR. That means Indian National Committee for Space Research, that was formed in 1962. So this is how 1960s went through. So the first thing that went through in the early 1960s was the development of a sounding rocket. So the concept of sounding rocket came. How I'll just share that if you could see here, this is the line. This is called the magnetic equator. It is not the geographic equator. What happens in the magnetic equator is that the magnetic angle, the dip in the magnetic angle is actually zero. So to understand what is the and to understand this principle of electrojet, which is a strong belt of charged particles, we needed a launch station to understand that. So in India, that point just came here in a little small village called Thumba. It's a fisherman's village, and it still exists right now, where the magnetic equator touches, and that became the hub of all scientific study in India. And accordingly, the next sounding rockets were actually was launched from here in 1963 on 21st of November 1963. Although the sounding rockets were not from India, but it actually helped establish a base and to know the tidbits of what actually takes place into account. What are the necessities of a launch? What is required? A telemetry, a launch vehicle, and how it needs to be assembled. This all the things actually started people started understanding these things. And even today, this place operates once a month a sounding rocket to understand the charged particle, the phenomenon of charged particle that actually helps in understanding the weather, the meteorology. These are the two small pictures. This is the person, Mr. Arav Mudan, who had went way back to USA in 1963 to understand the telemetry and the tracking station, the principles governing that way back in 1963. And this is the right visual is the launching, the first successful launch from the 1963 from the soil of India. All of us are much familiar with these two pictures. This is what part of a launch vehicle being carried out in the pillion of a cycle, and this is the church where we call it as the Makkah of the Indian space program, where it all started. The assembly, the integration of small satellites, that small launch vehicle started here, and you see how it has become right now. It has transformed into a beautiful museum right now. Now in 1968, what important thing happened was that this turtles, although the launches were going to be carried out successfully from the Thumba launch station, but soon it was decided by our Indian Prime Minister that because so many people are helping us in this program from France, UK, and West Germany, providing the technical equipment to, such as the telemetry receivers, tracking systems. In return, India offered to dedicate turtles as an international scientific facility open to all of its members as a goodwill gesture. Now the actual play begins. Now, Dr. Sarabhai is the founding father of Indian space program. He has already established a modest rocket launching station at Thumba. By mid-1960s, Sarabhai had a 10-year blueprint ready for an indigenous satellite with an indigenous rocket launcher. That was his plan. Because the sounding rockets were already increasing in frequency, and to carry out launches for Indian rocket launches, they needed a spaceport. So they were trying to looking for a site on the eastern
Sandipan, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it okay?
You are back now. Yes, we lost you for a couple of seconds, I think 10-15 seconds. You can resume back from the same point.
Yeah. So so then accordingly by 1971, the Sriharikota was found out, and the range was ready by 1977, and the range was ready to launch satellites. The entire program began by 1971, which was a modest facility then, but now it has become one of the most important spaceports of India. Now, what was the progress during the 1960s and 1970s? To set up the launch facility by 1965, actually, we had requested NASA to give us some building scouts, so that we get in turn whatever the technological advancement they have done. NASA, as usual, had said no, we won't give you as such, but we'll give you some few scouts for training, because they feared that the rockets might be treated as a military potential or potential threat to their organization or to the entire community. Now, with the death of Dr. Bhabha in 1967, DAE, which was originally under which ISRO was, the INCOSPAR was, now Dr. Sarabhai became the head, and a separate wing like Department of Atomic Energy became a Department of Space. So which came into existence in 1969, 15th August 1969. And by 1968, the work for India's indigenous satellite launch vehicle has started. And what was that? It was a 4-stage solid propellant rocket with a payload of 30 to 40 kg in the 400-kilometer orbit. That was the main thing. Now, to gain knowledge, because it was to gain knowledge regarding this thing, specialized teams were sent on the world tour in the major space in the major space installations to learn to know how the tidbits and the other launch requirements to carry out such things. And to be frank, in the regime of 1970 to 1993, 1,000 sounding rockets called M100 were launched between that period. During that period, ISRO also lost Dr. Sarabhai in 1971 and was later founded by and he became the head, Professor Satish Dhawan. And what he did was, because this is such an ambitious program, we needed help. We cannot just make the satellites and the launch vehicles by ourselves sitting in a small village of Thumba. So we needed to induct the expertise of the other organizations like HL, HMT, BEL, IIC, and the government lab. So this was taken care. This is a very interesting picture. if you see here, this is what Mr. Aravamudan and Dr. Sarabhai are looking at a moon rock. It's a moon rock because in 1969, the Neil Armstrong had already gone to the moon, and then they had sent one of the small moon pieces across all over the world. So this was a walnut shape that was sent to TERS, and it still exists in our space museum. So now 1960s is complete. Now we are looking into the growing stage of ISRO, where we face a huge amount of challenges. But we also developed two important launch vehicles: the Satellite Launch Vehicle version 3 and ASLV, which were both indigenous rocket space launchers to carry out indigenous satellites. The mission SLV-3. Dr. Kalam was spearheading this project in 1980s. The aim was basically to launch a satellite into the orbit. Now, individual centers got established because of this thing, because we cannot concentrate on just one center to take care of all the activities, because the activities were huge, and the role of the quality came into the picture. And the first time the acceptance and qualification plans were introduced, that is what we call in ISRO as SRQA, the Structural Reliability and Quality Assurance Program. This is one of the pictures just before the few days before the launch of the first SLV rocket, SLV vehicle, which was under assembly in 1979. You could see Dr. Kalam and Professor Satish Dhawan inspecting it. Now, launch scheduled to be 1979 early morning, and a few minutes after the vehicle took off, it crashed. It literally crashed in the Bay of Bengal. What was the cause? It was generally a failure of the reaction control thruster, and which was an undetected leak that had drained it of the control fluids, and this led to the loss of control of vehicle. Expected. I mean, we are trying to develop something which was for the first time, and it's expected that we'll have a failure. Fair enough. Even in the second launch, it is very amusing. There was a nail-biting finish to it, because approximately around 2 minutes before the launch had to be postponed or had to be aborted, because if you have seen a rocket launch, there is an umbilical cables are there, which actually one are manually pulled off, and one somewhat like automatically they are pulled off, but the manual one just didn't refuse to come off, and that's why it has to be detached. One person used to climb a 60-meter high building, and then he used to disconnect that to take care of that. But luckily, the second launch was successful. And it was a great day in 1979, on 18th of by 18 July 1980, that that SLV-3 had placed Rohini 1 satellite into the orbit. With this, ISRO proved that the failure is not the opposite of success; it's actually a part of success. And this quote will come again and again in my next few slides. So what was the essence? A made in India rocket launched from Indian soil injected an Indian made satellite into a 300 kilometer by 900 kilometer orbit. It was an ecstatic moment. And remember this was the original aim of Dr. Sarabhai also. So that was fulfilled basically. So yeah, this is the picture, and all the Indians were very happy seeing this, because India had become a 6th member of the exclusive club of spacefaring nations by then. Now, the mission SLV-3, finally 2 more successful flights also followed, and the credentials of SLV-3 were firmly established. So these are the list of few SLV launches. These I have just got from the ISRO www.isro.gov.in. You can always have a look here. So these are the 79, 80, 81, 83. So these were the frequencies with which they used to launch then. Now, serious challenges were lying ahead. Next was the ASLV, which is the Augmented Space Launch Vehicle. After SLV-3 success, Dr. Kalam had moved on to DRDO. Now, from 1984, AG will not help you in putting an orbit into. It will not help you in putting an orbit into a satellite into an orbit, or it will neither serve the remote sensing, or it will neither serve you the what's that called, the communication part. So we needed to augment our the satellite, the weight of the payload. So for this time, the design of the rocket was changed. A bulbous nose was used, and closed loop guidance system was ensured. And ASLV was a 5-stage vehicle derived from 4-stage SLV plus 2 additional of strap-ons. You see here in the picture how it is here. Yeah, these are the 2 strap-ons. Unfortunately, again, the first 2 launches failed. again, one at T plus 40, there was a successful launch till 48.7 seconds. After that, it went off. Similarly, 1988 also same thing. So ASLV D1 and D2 met a similar existence what SLV3 D1 got. Now, what was the reaction from SLV failure? So far, how many launches we have? So far, we have 4 of SLV3 launch and 2 of ASLV. Out of 6 launches, 3 launches have already gone. And 1 was like about to go. So we had only 2 successful launches out of 3 successful launches out of 6 launches. So large amount of public money was involved and answers need to be given. The nation had been very understanding when the first mission failed, but this time public was not forgiving, and people started claiming things like that SLV is a sea-loving vehicle and ASLV is a always sea-loving vehicle. Always sea-loving vehicle means it just wants to go and dip into the Bay of Bengal, which is just near adjacent to the Sriharikota port. Now, serious challenges ahead of ISRO because the reputation was in doldrums. Now, what were the lessons that learned from ASLV? These are very important because they put up a failure analysis committee. It took more than 2 years to come out with a modified structure. Now, 4 years of intensive FA for the next successful launch in 1992. And in 20th May 1992, SROS-C, which was a spacecraft, although we planned for a 150 kg as the payload, but okay, we were happy with the 106 kg that we are going to launch. Similarly, again in 1994, we got a successful launch in 108 kg, SROS-2. So what we learned importantly that the teams learned that the rocketry is unforgiving and it calls for a totally disciplined approach to ensure quality and reliability. These are the list of ASLV launches. So actually now what happens on the backdrop of the failure of ASLV provided a low-cost precursor that the launches, the failures happened in ASLV because PSLV was much more costlier, and it would have taken a lot of slashing from the media and the people to have few more PSLV failures. I'm going to come to PSLV very soon, which finally became the workhorse of ISRO, capable of launching remote sensing satellites of more than 1 ton class into polar orbits. Now, we are coming into here. The PSLV, the Russian deal, and the GSLV from 1990 to 2010. It was a tricky period here. So this is a PSLV launch vehicle, as everyone understands this one. PSLV is an alternate solid and liquid stage stages, where the first and the second stages, first and the third stages are of the solid propellants are filled, while the second and the fourth stages are liquid propellants are filled. Now history similarly repeated again. First launch was a failure, 10:42 AM on September 20, 1993. And what happened again after the third stage ignition, the entire vehicle went into an angular motion, and again it just dipped into the Bay of Bengal. And the FA found out that there was a collision between the second stage and the third stage, and but such hidden and potential failure. So if you could understand that the last the first 2 ASLV and the first PSLV launches gave enough insights for the PSLV team to take into account the correction that needs to be ensured so that future missions do not encounter such failures. And accordingly, there was 100% launch vehicle success. From then onwards, PSLV D2, October 1994 to PSLV C50, which is in December 2020. So many launches were there, 50 PSLV launches were there. But each time there was 100% launch vehicle success, I am saying. And yeah, I mean, people can think that they are the god there, PSLV, and that was made so robust. So now, I mean, in the entire world fraternity, the PSLV has a success rate of around more than 95%, which is a big achievement. Now, what next? So 2 things have been taken care. One, from the SLV, the first thing that was taken care was this metrology was taken care by the sounding rockets, and this remote sensing was taken care by the PSLV. Now, telecommunication or the communication part, that needs to be taken care by some other launch vehicle. How? We need to develop a launch vehicle to carry INSAT or GSAT, which is the Indian satellites which are kept in the geostationary orbits for the communication part, to be present in the GTO, which are the geotransformatory orbits. It was very nice. The plan was very good, but to place the payload into the geostationary orbit, we required a cryo engine. And cryo engine is difficult to make primarily because of the challenging conditions of the temperatures involved. We need a satellite in GTO is at an altitude of approximately 35,786 kilometers. I can show you here. Normally, these are the low Earth orbit. These circles around the globe, this Earth are the low Earth orbit, while this elliptical one is the geosynchronous orbit. Now, the story of GSLV revolves around the development of cryogenic upper stage to power the communication satellite into the GTO. Initial concept was already taken care by by Sarabhai because of that need for the communication satellite. So this was our PSLV liquid engine, the liquid engine that we use in our Vikas engine. So during our SLV3 launch and ASLV were all solid propellant rockets. The Vikas engine came for the first time, which is the second stage in our PSLV, which is being used. Which was developed for PSLV collaboration with France in 1970s, who used Viking engine in their Ariane launch vehicle. This was the first liquid engine to be used in our rocket. But for GSLV, a cryo engine was needed. We cannot go ahead with Vikas engine to put it up at the fourth stage. So that is difficult. Now, liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen serve as excellent propellants with highest ISP, which are the main propellants for the cryo engine. But they exist in the liquid state at around 77 Kelvin and hydrogen at 20 Kelvin. So developing the cryo engine was 100 times more difficult due to the material choice that needed to work with the cryo propellants. And this was the cryo engine. You see how many structures are here. Now, the cryo engine. So ISRO had lost one important part there, because when the Vikas engine program was started in 1970s with the collaboration with SEP, the SEP was in a bit of a problem. So they had offered to sign a collaborative deal with ISRO for a cryogenic engine along with the Vikas engine. But ISRO only agreed for this Vikas engine part only, but not for the cryogenic one. And they did not think that it is necessary for them. And by the time they felt that it was necessary for them, SEP was not offering them, first of all. By 1988 and 1999, two more companies from US were offering, and it was huge, $800 million at that point of time for two engines. That were huge costly. So somehow India managed to get a contract with Glavkosmos of Russia that two operational 12-ton cryo engines will be given, and at a fraction cost of US. And also they will give all the design documents and everything. But here the problem came. USA claimed that it is a violation of the MTCR, which is the missile test control regime, which is because the big superpowers at that point of time feared that if such technology is given to the smaller country, they might misuse against us. And the main problem was disintegration of USSR by 1991. So this contract was broken by the somehow due to the interference of USA, and it had a monumental implications on our communication program. That is the launching of the INSAT and the GSAT program, the GSAT satellites, which would actually help in getting the better communication for India, and that actually got affected for a decade. So it affected for a decade. So from 1991, India struggled. And although ISRO was buzzing with the PSLV success, some remote sensing satellites and these communication satellites were being carried by the foreign carriers. They used to give it to the foreign at a very high cost. Due to the India did not have that payload capacity, the capability was lacking, because at that point of time, the PSLV used to launch around, say, from 1 ton to 1.5 ton. But this INSAT and GSAT were quite heavy communication satellites. They need a higher launch vehicle capacity to launch it. So by 2001, what India decided was some of the cryogenic engines and the stages that were given by the Russians, they will use that one. So the first launch engine with the Russian cryo engine was taken off by 2001. And correctly, again, the launch was aborted 1 second before the launch, because one of the strap-on booster did not develop sufficient thrust. And this was the reaction. Like, time and time again, the first launch is getting somehow in a problematic situation. But this was corrected, and GSAT-1 was successfully launched to G2 by April 18. So, okay, you can say that the first launch of GSLV was a success. And GSLV Mark 1 is actually all those launches of GSLV that took Russian cryo engines and stages in our third stage for putting our communication satellites into the orbit. Those are Russian engines. These are all the launches that were carried out by the Russian engines from 2001 to 2007. But we need, but those Russian engines were limited for us. So we needed our Indian indigenous cryogenic engine. So April 10, 2010, it marked a very auspicious day where our first indigenous cryo stage was used in our own launch vehicle, and that launch vehicle came to be known as GSLV Mark II. And the mission was GSLV D5, and the satellite, the payload was GSAT-4. However, it also meant a cold start. Cryogenic engine underperformed, and associated smaller engines underperformed, and it was a failure. Again in the same year, December 25, 2010, and this is that same picture of ISRO, the team that I showed off there in my initial slides. The reaction of the people, how it was. The GSLV F6. It was normal up to 47.5 seconds. Then somehow it spiraled, and a command had to be given by the range safety officer to destruct it. And because an inadvertent snapping of the group of 10 connectors at the bottom of the cryo stage was done, and because of this, the entry into the exclusive club of 5 countries that makes the cryogenic engines indigenously eluded India until Jan 2014. India could have gone into by 2010, but because of this failure, India had to wait till Jan 2014. And you can see here in the right that India joins a small group by 2014. What is this small group? It is the small group of using an indigenously developed cryo engine for their own launch vehicle. So that was delayed. So had India got that cryogenic engine from SCP France, India would have been by 1990s. But somehow it got delayed till 2014. 7th serial number here. All these launches, whatever has been carried out, has been successful in GSLV Mark II. The last launch was in December 19, 2018, and all these have been very, very successful. And very much testimony to the fact that ISRO has always, whenever there's a failure, ISRO has always checked out what are the failure analysis. They have left no stone unturned to check each and every aspect to understand what may be the cause of failures and how to negate it in the future launches. So this was till GSLV Mark II, and while I personally like this configuration of the vehicle, it looks very elite to me. This launch vehicle. Although many people have this GSLV Mark III as their favorite vehicle, I like GSLV Mark II. It has a different swag around it. I just like it. And now the final part, the current scenario, where I will go into talk about the GSLV Mark III, the successes and the future program. So GSLV 3 is basically, everyone knows, because of it can put 4-ton class of satellites into the GTO orbit. This is the one. This is the basically the 2 solid motors S200. These are 200-ton propellants are there. Then this is the Vikas engine here in the middle. Is there, and here is the payload where it's kept. It's a 3-stage vehicle with, as I told, with the S200 plus L110 is the 110 propellant, 110-ton propellant is being given, and C25 is the cryogenic stage. And with that, we have had 3 successful missions, launch vehicle missions, 3 successful. First one was in June 5, 2017, GSAT 19. Then November 14, 2018, it was GSAT 29. And in Mark III M1, it was Chandrayaan 2, which we all have witnessed that remarkable episode in the history of ISRO. Now, what did we take away from all of this? This is a great thing that we need to understand, because if we who have understood all my slides, one fact was common, that each of the launch vehicles had met an obstacle in their initial part, but it took some amount of analysis from our side to make it a success. Why? Because rocketry is always a tricky business to operate. ISRO always faced hurdles in the last 50 years, and the team across the 5 decades, starting from 1960s till 2020s, did a commendable work to stick to their beliefs, although they met with severe adversities, either during the operation of the launch vehicles or from international forum. And what did we get? What was the fruits of the perseverance? This was the fruit of the perseverance. This was, if people can recollect, this is the PSLV launch that This is the this is the Chandrayaan-1 mission that actually helped to trace of molecules of water on the surface of the moon. This was launched in 2008. This is, everyone knows, this is the Mangalyaan mission. It was way back launched in 2013, September, I think November 2013 it was launched. September 2013 it was launched. And this one was the famous 104 satellites in one go. Although the record has been broken by, but it also took humongous amount of courage to place all those satellites in the orbit. So so these are the fruits of perseverance that we are getting after. These are the dividends that we are getting. Yeah. And so what are the future projects in the pipeline? I cannot disclose much, but these are what is available. I can disclose this. The semi-cryo engine that is being developed. This may be soon going to help in replacing the Vikas engine, and it's also a reusable. It's also, the fuel is also eco-friendly. It is using actually LOX, liquid oxygen, and kerosene as the propellant, and it can have a payload of 6 tons, which is still not now. It's still not available. The maximum we can go till is 4.5 tons with GSLV Mark III Bahubali 1. Then this is the LOX methane engine that we are trying to develop, because it's a green propellant basically. It will have less toxicity, and the satellite propulsion, it will be used basically in satellite propulsion, and it may replace PS4 stage, the 4th stage of PSLV, which is right now being operated by the propellants like UDMH and MON3, N2O4 and MON3. And C32 stage is being developed, which is the stage, so that we can put in 32 tons of propellants. Rather than C25 stage, we are going for the C32 stage. And it's the biggest cryogenic tank which is being developed under HAL, and it is intended for hopefully the Gaganyaan mission. And the other launch vehicle that is in progress, and the other is basically this SSLV, which is being developed to launch small satellites to low Earth orbits, because it has an integration and launch within 24 hours. There's Gaganyaan mission also in the pipeline. The Chandrayaan 3 is also in the pipeline. And thank you. And yes, this is a disclaimer that all my technical information is from www.isro.gov.in. Yes, I've reached the end of my slides, and I hope you had a great journey, reminiscing the history of ISRO with struggles and some fruitful successes over the last 6 decades. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeepan. I think that was quite a detailed journey. I mean, I had got to, I'm not sure if you really said you had worked for 3.5 years. It looks like much longer than that you might have spent there. And there might be good content for a Netflix documentary there if you want to try. So, no, thanks. Thanks for taking us through there. Let's open up the Q&A. We have some questions. I think somebody already raised their hand. I'm not sure who was that, if it's still there. Maybe if anybody wants to unmute and ask the question, please go ahead. And then otherwise, I'll read out from the chat. Any volunteers? No. Okay. Let's go from the first, the latest one. So this is from Raj Kumar. What was the reason for failure of Vikram lander? And he also wants to know about the quantum communication program of ISRO.
See, the one thing of the Vikram lander, as I've already mentioned, that it takes time to understand what goes in the failure. Like you have seen how SLV3 failed, the ASLV failed. Now Vikram lander, if you see, that's what we conjecture, that there have been the surface, whatever the particles beneath the soil that might have helped in detaching, or maybe the not in a very good state of how the landing should have been there. But I feel that it was one of those reasons that, how to say that, because it was for the first time that we did there. The lunar soil is different, and the elements hidden there is different. And yeah, I mean, I cannot say much because that is very technical here. But yeah, I mean, we'll try in the future to have successful landings possible in the Chandrayaan 3, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. There's another one. Somebody's going to ask? No.
May
Okay.
I-
Yes,
may
sir.
I-
Ken, sir.
May I
Yeah,
say
sure, sir.
something?
Yes, sir.
May I
Please.
say something, sir? Well, may I say something? Yes. So thanks a lot. Let me thank my dear friend Sandeepan. It has been a great pleasure to listen to him, the details.
Thank you, sir.
And in fact, my intuition about the failure is probably there are 4 engines which were supposed to reduce its speed. And apparently one of the engine might have failed, with the result that it tilted in one of the direction and it fell a few kilometers or meters away from the spot. That is my intuition. I have already made some kind of a presentation or number of slides about this. That is my interest really. Another issue I want to mention to my dear friend is about cryogenic engine. I presume if my dates may be wrong because my memory is failing these days. Apparently, Russia refused to give us that engine. Then subsequently, as my friend tells, we developed that engines ourselves. Our scientists, I normally say, we have all the talent to develop whatever we want to develop. There's no doubt about it. So just as we could develop cryogenic engines, likewise, I normally say this, nuclear plants which we are getting from Russia, 6 plants, 60,000, I would say, crores of amount is likely to be involved. I normally used to say, if we spend that much amount of money in our scientific research, we can develop our own nuclear reactors. So apparently that has been my wish at this stage in my life, that our scientists, you see, can develop, they need some kind of a support, and that's available from our authorities that be. Thanks a lot, my dear friend. I wish you good luck and God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ken, sir. Maybe I'll move on to another question then. This is from Colonel Mahesh Mathur. Is the major advantage of strap-on detachable or other advantages also?
No, strap-ons is actually what first thing, it is just used to augment because whenever we are going upwards, the rocket is going vertically upwards. It's just to get the rocket up into against the dense atmosphere, that is pressurizing it. So strap-ons are basically used so that we have a successful uplift. That is what we are being used. That's the only thing. It's just an augmentation, and they can easily separate also.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandeepan. There's one question from Mr. Anil Raj. Is ISRO working on reusable launch vehicles like SpaceX?
Yes, it is, but it is in a very preliminary stage. Reusable launch vehicle, in sense, it is very much difficult to say as such, but it's a very preliminary stage. But yes, hopefully in this decade we can get some information regarding this. I cannot share much more regarding that.
Okay. No, thanks. I think I understand that. Next is from Partha. This is regarding the work culture. So how does the failure analysis happen in ISRO once something doesn't work? So what is the work culture look like? Are the people pointed out, or is it something that collectively team looks at it and tries to improve from there?
No, it's actually the failures can be. So, okay, let me put it in this way. See, failures happen on a day-to-day basis. Whenever we are trying to realize a material or realize a system, failures happen on a day-to-day basis. But whatever you see on the principal front, even the failure analysis goes on for whatever some fasteners, even they fail. Even a fastener, small 10 mm, like 1 mm fastener, even if it's failed, we do have a failure analysis meeting. It is not that we blame each other, but yes, supportive and a progressive teamwork does carry on. But whenever this kind of a things goes on, like an entire launch vehicle fails, or in fact the satellite fails, then definitely the center takes into account. They sets up their team from the HQ. They set up a team that this will be the failure analysis committee. They are going to be this is going to be the chairman, and subsequent amount of researchers and discussions go on for the next 2 to 3 months to understand. And we do not assume also whatever might have gone wrong. We start from the scratch, from the raw material details we start, and how this entire thing has gone to the realization, how the component failed, and everything is taken care.
Okay. Okay. No, thanks. Is there anything else there, Partha, that you wanted to ask?
No, thanks, Sandeep. And indeed, it was very nice to know that, because you said that success, failure is nothing but a part of success. So that is a great message. And then it's good that every organization can take that mantra as it is. And congratulations. Not a direct related question, but I had wanted to always ask, what made you interested in ISRO? And then not many people these days would want to go and jump themselves into the core engineering. So what do you find so unique about ISRO that as a discipline engineer or a discipline specialist? Thank you.
About a quotation about failures. People say, even if you have failed 100 times, don't get disappointed. You have learned 100 ways of failing. So you have learned something out of it. That's a way to look at failures. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So just to that, the last question that Pushpa sir had asked me. Sir, actually, I am a material scientist. So I had done my BTech and MTech both in material science and metallurgy. So from the very beginning, I was quite interested in this things called microstructure of metals. This is like a blueprint that is being shown by different metals when it is under cryo temperature or a high temperature. So that always fascinated me, and I was never aware that ISRO has this thing that they have a metallurgy department who actually take care of this entire launch vehicle, whatever the materials and the metals that are being used in our launch vehicles. But yeah, way back when I was in Bombay in 2016, it helped me through a conference. I met some person. That person had come for a paper presentation from ISRO, and then it actually led me an eye opener that yes, material scientists are taken care. So if I can have a good knowledge regarding these structures and all those, then I can always have a good career in ISRO. So yeah, so that's how I entered into ISRO, because my placement was not that good from IIT Bombay. But yeah, that was also failure that helped me go into the path of success and reaching ISRO.
Good evening. This is Mahesh Madhav, Mr. Sandeepan. This is regarding the answer which you gave for the augmentation by the strap-ons.
Yeah.
Now, augmentation can be in line also. See, if it is in aerodynamically shaped, it could be in line also. But I feel the strap-on was basically so that it gets detached and the drag is reduced at that height. So is that the reason?
Yeah, that is perfectly fine. Yeah, that is perfectly fine. I means I did not want to be more technical about it, but you are absolutely correct regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the call? If not, then I have one more question here from our very own Utsav, talking about the Nambi Narayan project. You can share something on that?
No, absolutely not. Let the film release, people will get to know about it.
Okay, good. There was one more question. Let me just see. For Yashwant, why our rocket stages doesn't return back to launch pad?
It is basically these are expendable stages, and we do not have. We are yet to garner that facility to get a kind of a reusable launch vehicle. We are yet to step onto it. So sooner or later, we will definitely get that the reusable launch vehicle, and the rocket strap-on will seriously come again back to the launch spaceport.
Okay. There's one question from Mr. Anil Raj, like Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin is trying to send people to space, or maybe I can add something. Are our big billionaires planning any organization like that? Is that which is in public domain?
No, not really. But to plan this, we must understand that Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic are entrepreneurs. They are entrepreneurs, and they are planning it on as they are planning it as a program for a hospitality program, for a recreation level. And ISRO is not planning that for sure at this point of time. But yes, if definitely the private players come into the picture, that can always be taken care of in the near future from the Indian point of view.
Okay. Okay, I think that was a good question answer session. If there is anybody else anybody wants to ask any question, please feel. Otherwise, we are almost there at the end of our time. So if there is no other question, I would like to invite, first I'd like to thank you, Mr. Sandeepan, for taking out time and talking us through. It was amazing. The amount of research you have put into, and with the level of details, the vehicle numbers and the dates, etc. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And I would like to then invite Utsav for the vote of thanks. Utsav.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sandeepan, for the enlightening session. We enjoyed it and thoroughly. At every slide, there was lots of takeaway for us, lots of stories. So I would like to thank you, Sandeepan Das, for this great session. Secondly, I will like to thank Mr. Devesh Khatu, CEO of IITB for sharing about IITB and his kind words about Bangalore chapter. Then I would like to also thank our technology partner, AttendU. Without their support, we could not have arranged this session. So they were a technology partner. Thank you for that. And next is the organizing team of everyone like Ali, Rijas, Vidut, everyone who has supported for this organizing this event, from contacting Sandeepan to sharing all the details in different groups and publicizing and promotion. Devesh and IITBA for supporting us in promoting this event and reaching out to more people so that people can join and get knowledge sharing. Then last but not the least, the audience. You have been a fantastic audience, and there was a lots of encouraging like question, enlightening questions which brought out more of details out of this station. So thank you, audience, for that, and it's a big clap for you only. So that's it from my side. Yeah. Have a great
Okay, thank you, Utsav. And I think I would also like to thank GS Cancer there, because I mean you bring in the wealth of knowledge and experience, and we'll definitely reach out to you, sir, for further ideas and planning of the sessions. And I think there was a question about how to reach out. So we will be sharing this URL with this recording of this one will be available. And you have the contact details of IIT Bombay Bangalore chapter, which I think Vidyut you will be sharing. So whoever wants to reach out can contact us via that.
Thank you.
Vidyut,
Thank you
do
very
you want
much.
to add something on that one? Because there were a couple of questions. How do we reach out for any future events, or maybe to Mr. Sandeepan itself?
Yes. So as mentioned, I have pinged the email ID for our chapter in the chat box. So if you want, you can utilize it for sharing any suggestions or feedback for the entire executive committee team of the chapter. And also I have shared the link to a volunteer registration form. If you'd like to be a part of such wonderful events, and if you're interested to implement any of your ideas which you have and which you'd like the organizing team to focus on in the upcoming events for the chapter, please feel free to fill the form and we will contact you very soon. We will add you to our WhatsApp group dedicated to all the volunteers of the chapter, and we'll make sure that all those wonderful ideas which you have are somehow implemented as a part of one of the other events in our chapter. But thanks a lot, Sandeepan, and to the entire organizing team for making this event a successful one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
We are officially closing the event, but if anyone would like to share something, just we'll stay back for 5 more minutes. If anyone wants to unmute and just share their experience from today's session.